I was pulled off the front lines on Karsus for 3 days after we cleared the last insurgent bunker. No warning, no congratulations. Just sealed orders and a transport headed for Orion Gate Station. I thought it was punishment. Turns out it was a promotion. Staff Sergeant Jack Reeves, Admiral Toland said as the viewport filled with the silver curve of the station. You've been reassigned to protective detail. Priority asset. I'm a combat marine, I replied. Not a bodyguard. You're whatever the situation requires. That was how I learned the name Princess Arynn Vale. The Aryn Dominion's heir had survived an explosion during peace negotiations, barely. 14 delegates dead, 2 Terran diplomats. The blast had originated from within the Aryn wing itself. Officially, it was extremist sabotage. Unofficially, someone on her own royal council wanted her gone. I met her an hour after docking. She stood in the observation chamber, pale silver skin catching the starlight like frost. Taller than I expected. Too still. Too composed for someone who'd nearly died. Her eyes, liquid violet, unreadable, shifted to me. "This is my new handler?" she asked without looking at the Admiral. "Your protector," he corrected. "I did not request a human guard." "Doesn't matter," I said evenly. "You've got one." That was the moment she finally looked at me. Not curious, not grateful, cold. "You will not command me, soldier." "I won't need to," I replied. "Just stay alive." Her jaw tightened. The air between us felt charged, like the second before a firefight. I'd fought insurgents, pirates, mercenaries, but I'd never stood between a princess and her own government before. And something told me the enemy wasn't done trying. The first week with Princess Arynn Vale nearly made me miss the war. On Karsus 4, the enemy wore mismatched armor and carried rifles that rattled when they ran. You could track them by heat signatures and bad decisions. On Orion Gate Station, the enemy wore silk robes, diplomatic badges, and smiles sharp enough to cut through titanium. And my primary complication wasn't the assassins. It was her. Aryn made it very clear from the beginning that she considered me an insult. "You walk too loudly," she told me on the second day. "It discourages ambushes. It announces your presence." That's the point. Her eyes flashed faintly, the bioluminescent patterns beneath her skin shifting in irritation. I'd started noticing that about her species, their emotions weren't just expressed in tone. They rippled under the surface like moving constellations. "Subtlety is a form of strength," she said. "So is overwhelming force." She gave me a look that translated universally. Primitive. I'd been called worse. The cultural briefings described the Aryn as refined, cerebral, instinctively communal. What they didn't emphasize was how insulated their royalty tended to be. Aryn had grown up surrounded by layered security fields and ceremonial guards who bowed before they breathed in her direction. She wasn't used to someone telling her no. On day 3, she tried to dismiss half the human security perimeter because it made the delegation hall look militarized. "Denied," I said. She turned slowly. "You forget your position." "No, Your Highness. I remember it perfectly." "And what is it?" "To keep you alive, even when you don't like how I do it." The silence stretched. Several Aryn aides stood nearby, pretending not to listen. I could feel the political weight of it. Finally, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think danger follows me because I am careless. I think danger follows you because someone powerful wants you dead." That wiped the superiority from her expression, just for a second. But it came back fast. "You humans see threats everywhere. That's why we survive them." She turned away sharply, light pulsing along her shoulders in a pattern I'd learned meant restrained anger. The tension between us became routine. She criticized my scanning patterns. I corrected her tendency to wander into unsecured corridors. She accused me of paranoia. I pointed out the burn marks still visible on the outer hull from the explosion that nearly killed her. We existed in a constant standoff, professional, controlled, but sharp, until the oxygen failure. It happened during a closed-door strategy session in the Aryn sector. I was stationed near the rear access corridor, monitoring environmental readings out of habit. Something flickered on my wrist display. O2 levels, minor fluctuation. Probably nothing. Then it dipped again. Too fast. I stepped forward without asking permission. "Clear the room." Aryn's head snapped up from the projection table. "On whose authority?" "Mine." The Aryn officials hesitated. Fatal mistake. Their species processed decisions collectively, deliberatively. Humans didn't have that luxury. The numbers dropped another 3%. I crossed the room, grabbed Arynn by the forearm, careful, firm, and pulled her toward the exit. Gas vents hissed open overhead. Someone screamed. The oxygen mix shifted abruptly, replaced with a denser, narcotic compound. The room blurred at the edges. I activated my emergency respirator and shoved a portable mask over her face just as her knees buckled. She struggled against me, furious even as consciousness slipped. Unhand. Save it, I muttered. I forced the door seal override and dragged her into the corridor as alarms began wailing. Behind us, 3 Arynn advisors collapsed. Security teams flooded in seconds later. The sabotage had been precise, targeted specifically to the royal briefing chamber. A slow suffocation disguised as system failure. No explosion this time. Cleaner, harder to trace. If I'd waited for consensus, she'd be dead. She regained full consciousness in the medical wing an hour later. The first thing she did was glare at me. You handled me without permission. You're welcome. Her eyes flared brighter. Physical contact without consent is a violation in Arynn protocol. You prefer suffocation? Her jaw tightened. Then something shifted in her gaze. You reacted before the alarm. I don't wait for alarms. Silence. The Arynn medical director entered, confirming that the compound used was synthetic, engineered to mimic a maintenance malfunction. Someone with high-level clearance had overridden atmospheric controls. Someone inside. That night, I was summoned, not by her, but by Commander Harlow, the Terran liaison assigned to Orion Gate. You moved fast, Harlow said casually, leaning back in his office chair. Impressive instincts. Part of the job. He studied me too closely. You didn't hesitate. No. He smiled faintly. Good. It wasn't until I left his office that the pieces started clicking into place. The oxygen sabotage had been sloppy in one way. It triggered just within the margin where a hyper-alert guard might catch it, but not obvious enough for routine detection. It wasn't designed purely to kill her. It was designed to test me, to see how I reacted, whether I'd freeze, whether I'd follow procedure over instinct, whether I was predictable. I filed that realization away. The next morning, Arynn surprised me. She approached during breakfast, if you could call it that. Arynn cuisine resembled sculpted crystal more than food. You believe the oxygen failure was deliberate, she said quietly. Yes. And you believe it originated from within my own delegation. Yes. She studied me longer this time. You do not soften your conclusions. No. Her bioluminescence dimmed slightly, contemplative instead of hostile. In Arynn courts, suspicion is layered. Subtle. One does not accuse without irrefutable proof. In Terran courts, we assume everyone's capable until proven otherwise. A faint curve touched her lips, almost a smile. Primitive, she murmured. Efficient. For the first time, she didn't argue. But later that evening, as I reviewed security footage, I noticed something that made my pulse slow dangerously. Commander Harlow had been in the corridor adjacent to the environmental controls 15 minutes before the oxygen shift. And when I accessed the system logs, there was a temporary manual override authorization, Terran clearance code. High level. The kind only Earth Command or top-tier diplomatic staff possessed, including Harlow. I leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on the screen. This wasn't just internal Arynn politics. This was bigger. Someone was testing my loyalty, and someone else was escalating. I didn't tell Arynn yet, but when she looked at me across the chamber later that night, still wary, still proud, I saw something new in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but awareness. She had realized something, too, that I wasn't just a blunt instrument sent to control her. I was the only one in the room reacting fast enough to keep her alive. And whether she liked it or not, she was starting to understand that she needed me. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Write in the comments who the alien woman in this story looks like, and who you would like to see in the next one. Let's move on. The first night she came to my quarters, I thought it was a security breach. The connecting corridor between our assigned rooms was restricted access, biometric locked. If someone crossed it without my authorization, alarms should have triggered. They didn't. I was half awake when I sensed movement. Years of combat rewired my instincts that way. The door panel glowed softly as it slid open. I was on my feet in under a second, sidearm raised. Stop. She froze in the doorway. Princess Arynn Vale. Barefoot. silver skin dimmed to a muted glow. No ceremonial attire. No guards. Just her. "You were about to shoot me," she said flatly. "You entered without announcing yourself. I overrode the lock." "That's not reassuring." She studied the weapon in my hand, then my face. "No fear. Just irritation. I cannot sleep. I didn't lower the gun." "That's unfortunate." Her eyes narrowed. "Your environmental settings are incorrect. They're set to human standard." "That is the problem." She stepped fully into the room. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. For a second, we just stood there. The tension between us had shifted over the past few days. Less overt hostility, more careful evaluation. But this was different. "You could have called medical," I said. "It is not a medical issue." "Then what is it?" She hesitated. That alone caught my attention. Arynn didn't hesitate. "Our species does not sleep alone," she said finally. "Extended isolation during neural rest cycles causes destabilization." "That sounds psychological." "It is biological." I lowered the weapon slowly, but didn't holster it yet. "And I'm supposed to do what about that?" "Your presence stabilizes ambient neural frequency." I stared at her. "You're saying I'm soothing?" Her glow flickered faintly. "Your thermal signature is consistent. Dense. Predictable." "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." She ignored that. "I will remain in this room until first cycle. That is all." "No." The word came out automatically. Her posture stiffened. "Excuse me. You don't just walk into a Marine's quarters and declare occupancy." She crossed her arms. "You are assigned to protect me, not to share a bedroom." Silence. She looked away first. That surprised me more than anything. "You misunderstand," she said more quietly. "This is not intimacy. It is survival." I studied her more carefully then. Her bioluminescence wasn't fluctuating in anger. It was uneven, unstable, subtle. If I hadn't spent days watching those emotional patterns, I might have missed it. "You haven't slept properly since the explosion," I said. She didn't answer. "Have you?" Her jaw tightened. "My chambers are empty. Because your counsel is under investigation. Because I no longer trust those assigned to guard me." That landed heavier than she probably intended. I finally holstered the sidearm. "There's a chair," I said, gesturing toward the far wall near the viewport. "You stay there. Door remains unlocked. No funny business." "I do not know what that means." "It means I'll tolerate this arrangement under controlled conditions." Her glow steadied slightly. She crossed the room with fluid, almost weightless movement. Arynn physiology was different from ours. Longer muscle fibers, quieter steps. She folded herself into the chair, knees drawn in, spine curved in a way that didn't look anatomically possible for a human. Within minutes, the faint, irregular pulse beneath her skin stabilized into a slow, steady rhythm. I lay back on my bunk, staring at the ceiling. This was insane. A Terran Marine sharing sleeping space with an alien princess who had openly resented his existence 48 hours ago. But she didn't move again that night. At 0500, when I rose automatically, she was already awake, watching me. "How long?" she asked. "How long what?" "Until you noticed I was awake." I noticed. She didn't comment. She left without another word. The next night, she returned. This time she knocked. "Progress." I opened the door before she could override it. "You planning to explain this to anyone?" I asked. "It requires no explanation. Everything requires explanation." In Arynn culture, shared rest within protective bonds is not questioned. "Protective bonds?" She tilted her head slightly. "You are my assigned guardian. That's a contract. It is also proximity." I didn't like the way that word sounded in her mouth. But she stepped inside again, calmer this time. The pattern repeated. Night after night. She would arrive just after station lights dimmed, settle into the chair, and her glow would stabilize within minutes. We didn't talk much at first. Then small things started slipping through. "Humans dream violently," she observed one evening. "You've been monitoring my REM cycles? I can feel fluctuations in your neural output." "Creepy. You vocalized during distress." I exhaled slowly. "That's not your concern, is it not?" The question lingered. She began asking about Earth, about snow, about why humans preferred silence during sleep when her species relied on subtle, shared neural signals. I answered more than I should have, because she listened differently than her counsel did. Not analyzing, not strategizing, just absorbing. On the 7th night, I made a mistake. I accessed Arynn cultural archives out of curiosity. shared neural rest cycles, group sleeping traditions, protective clustering, all biological. Then I found the deeper classification: companion resonance bonding, reserved for bonded pairs, premarital, intimate. The documentation described the gradual synchronization of neural frequencies as a precursor to long-term pairing. My stomach tightened. When she entered that night, I didn't pretend not to know. "Is this bonding?" I asked bluntly. She froze mid-step. "Explain." "In your culture, companion resonance, shared sleep outside family clusters." Her glow shifted, brighter along the collarbone, dimmer near the shoulders. "You accessed restricted archives." I read. Silence. Then, very calmly, "It is associated." "Associated how?" She walked to the chair more slowly this time. "It is not performed casually." That's not an answer. It's signal selection. Selection. Of all the words she could have used. "Are you selecting me?" I asked. She looked at me directly. No arrogance. No mockery. Just something vulnerable and frighteningly honest. I did not intend to. That hit harder than if she'd said yes. "Then stop," I said quietly. She didn't move. "I cannot," she answered after a long moment. "Why?" "Because when I remain in your quarters, my neural field stabilizes beyond biological necessity." I swallowed. "That sounds like more than survival." "It is." The room felt smaller suddenly. "I was appointed your protector," I said slowly. "This wasn't supposed to become." She finished the sentence for me. "Personal." Her glow pulsed softly in the dark. We didn't move closer. We didn't touch. But something shifted permanently that night. The hostility was gone. The tension had changed. Not erased. Transformed. For the first time, when she closed her eyes, she didn't curl inward defensively. She relaxed. And for the first time since I'd been reassigned from war, I didn't feel like I was standing in enemy territory. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something far more dangerous. Because assassins and traitors? I knew how to fight those. But this was territory I'd never trained for. Titan Reach was supposed to be routine. High security, orbital summit. Neutral territory. Multi-species delegation. Tight perimeter. Reinforced corridors. Layered surveillance grids. The kind of place where nothing happens because too many people are watching. That assumption almost got her killed. By the time we docked, Arynn and I had fallen into an unspoken rhythm. She didn't argue my security protocols anymore. I didn't hover unnecessarily. When she stepped into a room, I positioned myself without instruction. When she paused mid-sentence during negotiations, I could tell whether it was calculation or discomfort. We weren't comfortable, but we were aligned. That was new. Titan Reach's conference hall was a ring of glass overlooking the planet's methane storms. Beautiful. Exposed. I hated it. "Relax, Sergeant," Commander Harlow said as we took our positions along the inner perimeter. "We've tripled the Terran security presence. Nobody's getting within 20 meters of her." "I prefer 10. He smiled thinly. "You always do." I didn't trust that smile anymore. After the oxygen sabotage on Orion Gate, I'd started quietly tracking anomalies in Terran clearance logs. Access overrides. Corridor shifts. Harlow's authorization code kept surfacing in proximity to routine checks that lined up too neatly with previous attempts. Nothing direct. Nothing provable. Just patterns. Arynn sensed it too. Not specifics, but tension. "You distrust him," she murmured as the delegates assembled. "Yes. Based on evidence. Based on instinct." Her glow pulsed faintly in what I'd learned was curiosity, not skepticism. Instinct is often dismissed in Arynn courts. It's why Arynn courts nearly lost you. She didn't argue. The first 3 days of the summit passed without visible incident. Negotiations were tense. Resource corridors, military demilitarization, border arbitration, but no violence. Too clean. On the 4th day, Harlow requested a private security realignment meeting. Just Terran personnel. No Arynn present. That alone set off every alarm in my head. I attended. 6 officers in a sealed chamber. Harlow at the head. "We've received intelligence," he began, calm and measured, "that separatist cells intend to abduct Princess Vale during tomorrow's plenary session." "Source?" I asked. "Classified." "Convenient." He ignored that. "We'll be transferring her to a secondary holding corridor 15 minutes before the session begins. Controlled movement. Minimal visibility." "No," I said immediately. Every head turned. Harlow's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Excuse me, Staff Sergeant? Route changes last minute create blind spots. We stick to published movement patterns. And risk a known threat? Safer than funneling her into a corridor no one's rehearsed." Harlow's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The decision has been made." "By who?" "By Earth Command." That was the moment I knew. He wasn't reacting to a threat. He was executing one. I left the meeting without another word and went straight to Arynn's quarters. She was reviewing diplomatic briefs when I entered. "You are agitated," she observed. "We're not using the secondary corridor tomorrow." Her gaze sharpened. "Explain." I outlined the plan. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she stood slowly. "You believe this is an extraction attempt?" "Yes." "By Terran Command?" "By someone wearing Terran Command." She stepped closer. "You accuse your own species." "I accuse anyone who puts you in a kill box." Her glow dimmed briefly, processing. "Then we alter the plan." "How?" She smiled faintly. "You forget that I am not merely cargo." The next morning, we followed Harlow's route. Exactly as planned. Except we didn't. At the last junction, Arynn stumbled deliberately, subtle enough to look organic, dramatic enough to halt movement. "Dizziness," she said in a strained voice. Security converged. Medical was called. In the chaos, I rerouted us back to the primary corridor under the guise of emergency stabilization. Harlow didn't protest. That was his mistake. If the secondary corridor had been safe, he would have insisted. Instead, he allowed it. Because the real trap wasn't where he'd claimed. It was in the primary hall. The moment we re-entered the glass conference ring, the first shot fired. A Terran sniper, positioned in the observation balcony reserved for Earth delegates. Not separatists. Not alien insurgents. Human. The bullet would have taken Arynn through the skull. It hit my shoulder instead. I didn't remember deciding to move. I just did. Impact. White-hot fire tearing through muscle. I tackled her to the floor as the second shot shattered the glass above us. Chaos erupted. Screams. Guards drawing weapons. Delegates scattering. I rolled, dragging her behind a support pillar as Terran security returned fire on their own man. The sniper dropped. Harlow was shouting commands. Too loud. Too controlled. I pressed a hand to my shoulder. Blood soaked through my uniform, but the wound was clean, through and through. Not fatal. Not today. "You are injured," Arynn said, voice steady but eyes blazing. "I've had worse." She grabbed my collar. "You took the projectile. That's the job." Her glow flared bright enough to illuminate the dust in the air. "No," she said sharply. "That is not the job. That is choice." Security teams moved to separate us from medical extraction. Arynn stood abruptly. "He remains." "Your Highness." "He remains with me." Her voice shifted, resonant, layered. Arynn authority in full command. "He is the one I trust." The room went silent. Not because of politics. Because of what that meant. In Arynn culture, public declarations of singular trust weren't casual. They were binding. Even Harlow froze. For the first time, his mask slipped. Just a fraction. Calculation. We were taken to a secured chamber for debriefing. Arynn refused to release my hand during medical treatment. I didn't comment. When the room finally cleared, and only we remained, she spoke quietly. "You knew?" "Yes." "And you still followed the route?" "To confirm." "You used yourself as bait." I met her gaze. I needed him to act. Her glow softened, not anger now. Something deeper. "You risked death." "I've done that before." For me, the weight of that hung heavy. "I was appointed your protector," I said slowly. "That hasn't changed." Her fingers tightened around mine. "It has." I didn't answer. Because she was right. Something had shifted again. Not just professional alignment. Not just biological proximity. She had publicly claimed me. And I had taken a bullet without hesitation. The political implications would ripple across two governments. But the personal ones? Those were louder. And far more dangerous. Because when she looked at me now, it wasn't with resentment. It wasn't even with guarded trust. It was with something that made my pulse heavier than the wound ever could. And I knew, standing there in a room full of fractured alliances, this wasn't just diplomacy anymore. This was becoming something neither of us could retreat from. The blockade began at 0300 station time. No warning. No formal declaration. Just a ripple in the tactical feed, and a line of unidentified cruisers dropping out of slip space beyond Titan Reach's orbital perimeter. I was awake when the alert hit. I always slept lightly now. Arynn was in the chair, no longer pretending it was temporary. She'd fallen asleep mid-conversation about Arynn military doctrine, silver glow faint against the dark bulkhead. The room flooded with red emergency lighting. External contact, the station AI announced. Multiple hostile signatures detected. Arynn's eyes opened instantly. No confusion, no fear. Warships, she said quietly. I checked the tactical feed on my wrist display. 3 cruisers. More Cathy Separatist insignia. Heavy artillery configuration. This isn't a raid, I muttered. It's a siege. Within minutes, Titan Reach's outer defense grid lit up with counterfire. Plasma arcs carved lines across space. Shockwaves vibrated faintly through the station structure. I grabbed my rifle. We're moving. She stood without argument. That alone told me how serious this was. Security escorts converged in the corridor. Terran and Arynn forces mixed and tense after the assassination attempt days earlier. Secure bunker, one officer ordered. We moved through reinforced passageways toward the lower defensive sector. The station's internal shield lattice hummed, absorbing the first volley of bombardment. It wouldn't hold long. Arynn walked beside me, silent. Too silent. You good? I asked. Yes. You don't look it. She didn't respond. We reached the bunker, reinforced composite doors sealing behind us. 12 VIPs inside. Mixed species. Fear thick in the air. Station command crackled over comms. Shields at 60%. Boarding signatures detected on Deck 7. I swore under my breath. A blockade was one thing. Boarding meant internal sabotage support. Someone had opened a window for them. Arynn's bioluminescence shifted, uneven. Something is wrong, she murmured. Besides the invasion? No. She closed her eyes briefly. Arynn neural resonance sensitivity. I dismissed it as superstition once. Not anymore. What? I pressed. Emotion. In the corridor? Yes. Fear. Controlled. I scanned the bunker. 8 guards. 2 Terran. 3 Arynn. 3 contracted security from neutral worlds. All armed. All tense. All normal, at least visually. She stiffened. The 3rd guard from the left. I shifted my position subtly, angling toward him. Human male. Standard uniform. Steady breathing. Too steady. His hand twitched near his sidearm a fraction too early. I moved first. I slammed into him just as he drew. Not a pistol, but a compact detonator wired beneath his armor plating. We hit the floor hard. He was strong. Trained. Not a random separatist. He fought like a professional. I disarmed him with a joint lock and drove his face into the deck plating until the detonator skidded across the floor. The explosive charge wired to his vest blinked active. 5 seconds. I ripped the power core free and tossed it toward the far corner as guards piled onto him. Silence fell heavy after the struggle. How did you know? One of the diplomats whispered. Arynn didn't look at the prisoner. She looked at me. He acted, she said calmly. That was enough. That trust again. Public. Absolute. The boarding reports escalated. Deck 7 compromised. Hostiles advancing toward lower levels. The bunker wouldn't hold if they reached it. We were boxed. I pulled up the station schematic on my display. Maintenance tunnels connected to docking bay 4, where emergency shuttles were housed. Tight corridors. Narrow. Small team could move fast, I said aloud. And the rest, a guard demanded. They draw attention. That's suicide. Only if they catch us. I looked at Arynn. The tunnels are narrow. You'll have to move quickly. She met my gaze steadily. I will. No heroics. I learned from the best. This wasn't the sheltered princess who'd mocked my bluntness weeks ago. This was someone who'd watched me bleed. The plan formed fast. Half the group, non-combatants, into the tunnels with 2 guards. The rest of us create noise. Move in the opposite direction. Draw boarding parties away before circling back. It wasn't elegant. It was desperate. The first contact happened 3 corridors out. More Cathy troops in black composite armor. Coordinated. Efficient. I dropped the first 2 before they cleared their corners. Arynn stayed behind me exactly as instructed. But when one broke formation and flanked left, I didn't see him. She did. A burst of captured plasma fire scorched past my shoulder. The more Cathy soldier fell. I turned sharply. She stood there holding the weapon, arms steady. Her glow burned bright, violent, and focused. You said stay behind you, she said evenly. You did not say remain useless. We ran. Explosions echoed through the station's spine. Gravity fluctuated briefly as hull sections were breached and sealed. By the time we reached Docking Bay 4, I'd lost count of how many corridors we'd cleared. Arynn had blood on her hands. Not hers. One more Kathy had broken through my guard at close range. I saw the blade too late. She didn't. She drove a maintenance tool into his throat with precision that shocked even me. No hesitation. No royal fragility. Just survival. When we sealed the shuttle hatch and engines ignited, she finally looked down at her hands. "I did not know I was capable of that," she whispered. "Most people don't," I said. The shuttle launched under cover of debris and weapons fire, slipping into emergency vector alignment away from the main engagement. Inside the cramped cabin, bodies pressed close. She moved beside me instinctively. Not because she had to, because she chose to. "Will it haunt me?" she asked quietly. "Yes." She absorbed that without flinching. "Will you teach me how to endure it?" "Yes." Her shoulder rested against mine. The station burned behind us in the viewport. Titan Reach would survive. Barely. But something fundamental had shifted. Not just politically. Not just militarily. She had fought. She had killed. For me. And in the maintenance tunnel, when plasma fire illuminated her face and she didn't hesitate to pull the trigger, I saw it clearly. This wasn't duty binding us anymore. It wasn't survival. It wasn't biology. It was choice. When the shuttle finally entered safe hyperspace vector, exhaustion hit like a wall. Arynn leaned against me fully now. No pretense. No distance. "Jack," she said softly. It was the first time she'd used my name without title. "Yes?" "If you had ordered me to evacuate alone, I would have refused." "I know. Would you have forced me?" "No." "Why?" "Because I wasn't just protecting her anymore. Because I couldn't imagine a future where she wasn't beside me." But I didn't say that. Instead, I said the safer truth. "Because I trust you." Her glow dimmed to something steady and warm. "I trust you," she replied. The words were simple, but in Arynn culture, they were binding. And somewhere between the boarding alarms and the last corridor firefight, the princess who once resented my presence had stopped being an assignment. She'd become my equal in the fight. And I knew, as hyperspace swallowed the stars outside, there was no going back to neutral ground anymore. The official reports called it a contained insurgent escalation. That was the diplomatic phrasing. Unofficially, Titan Reach had nearly fallen. Earth Command had been compromised at the highest liaison level, and the Arynn Dominion now had proof that someone inside the Terran chain of authority had attempted to trade their heir for leverage. Commander Harlow didn't survive the internal investigation. He didn't resist arrest. He didn't deny anything either. He simply stated that balance required sacrifice. He had believed removing Arynn would force a harder military alliance against the Morkathi. He'd gambled on the idea that one life, hers, was expendable. He was wrong. By the time we returned to Orion Gate for temporary debrief, the political landscape had shifted violently. Arynn walked differently now. Not physically, but perceptibly. Less sheltered, less ceremonial, more aware of mortality, and more aware of me. The first night back on the station, she didn't wait for formalities. She entered my quarters without knocking. Not out of arrogance. Out of certainty. "You are healing poorly," she said, glancing at the medical patch on my shoulder. "I've had worse. That is not a measure of acceptable recovery." She approached and, without asking, peeled back the edge of the med wrap. Her fingers were cool against my skin, gentler than they had any right to be after everything we'd survived. "You continue to minimize injury," she said quietly. "I continue to function. That is not the same." She replaced the patch with careful precision. Her glow was soft tonight. "Steady. Earth Command has offered reassignment," she said after a moment. "Of course they have. Frontier Patrol." I nodded once. "I expected it. You are being distanced from diplomatic sectors. Politics hate variables. And you are one." Apparently, silence stretched between us. The kind that used to feel tense. Now it felt heavy. "Come with me," she said. The words landed clean and direct. No preamble. No royal tone. Just her. I didn't answer immediately, because I had thought about this. More than I should have. "My father has extended formal invitation," she continued. "Position within the Royal Vanguard. Direct advisory authority on Terran combat doctrine. That's generous. It is strategic. And personal." Her glow brightened faintly. "Yes." I turned away, walking toward the viewport. Orion Gate's curvature reflected distant starlight. Warships still patrolled the perimeter. Security felt thicker now, more guarded. You belong with your people, I said. And you belong with yours? I've been a Marine since I was 17. That is not an answer. It's the only one I've had. She stepped closer. You fear irrelevance. I huffed a quiet laugh. That obvious? You define yourself by purpose. That's what soldiers do. And if purpose shifts, it doesn't. It did, she said firmly. You were assigned to protect me. Yes. And now? I didn't respond, because she wasn't wrong. Somewhere between the oxygen sabotage and the maintenance tunnels, the mission had changed. You think if you come to Arynn Prime, she continued softly, you will lose the version of yourself that survives war. I think I won't know who I am without it. She studied me carefully. I have watched you, she said. At rest. In combat. In quiet. That sounds invasive. It is observant. She stepped into my line of sight. You believe I see you as something more than you are. I met her gaze. You look at me like I'm better than I am. Her glow flickered with something like frustration. I look at you like you are exactly who you are. And who's that? She didn't hesitate. A man who stepped into plasma fire without calculation. A man who challenged his own command structure to prevent my capture. A man who bleeds and does not demand recognition for it. Her voice softened. You think that version of you disappears outside uniform? I don't know. That uncertainty is not weakness. It is for soldiers. Then stop being only a soldier. The word struck harder than any accusation she'd ever thrown at me. You make it sound simple. It is not simple, she admitted. It is choice. She moved closer still. Close enough that I could feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. Arynn temperature lower than human, but steady. You once said you were appointed my protector, she said quietly. Yes. And I resented you for it. I remember. I believed you were an instrument. A political tool. You weren't entirely wrong. I was. Her hand rose slowly, hesitated, then rested lightly against my chest. Direct contact. No chair between us. No careful distance. Every night I entered your quarters, she continued. I told myself it was biology. Neural stabilization. I swallowed. I read the archives, I said. I know. You knew I did. I felt the shift in you. Of course she had. It is not merely biological, she said. In Arynn tradition, companion resonance begins unintentionally and ends with declaration. My pulse slowed. And this is what? Her glow brightened slightly. This is me declaring that I chose you long before I understood I was choosing. The air felt thinner suddenly. You nearly died for me, she said. More than once. That was the job. No. Her voice sharpened gently. It stopped being only the job when you disobeyed command. She stepped even closer. If you leave for the frontier, you will survive. You will continue as you have. And if I come with you, you will not survive unchanged. I laughed softly. That sounds like a warning. It is an invitation. Silence again, but not tense, not uncertain, just heavy with possibility. You are afraid I will see you clearly and decide differently, she said. Yes. She reached up and touched my face lightly. Cool fingertips. Steady. I have seen you clearly since Titan Reach, she said. When you stood between me and the sniper. When you refused to let me fight alone. When you trusted me in that bunker without explanation. Her glow intensified, illuminating the room faintly. You are not losing yourself, Jack. You are expanding. The words settled deep. I had spent my entire adult life defined by uniform, rank, chain of command. Structure. Clarity. War was brutal, but it was simple. This wasn't simple. This was terrifying, because it required something I'd avoided for years. Vulnerability. If I come, I said slowly, I won't stand behind your throne as decoration. She almost smiled. I would never permit that. I will challenge your counsel. I expect it. I might anger your father. He nearly lost me twice. He will tolerate much. And this, I gestured between us. This isn't politics. No, she agreed softly. It is not. I exhaled slowly. Then what is it? She stepped onto her toes, bringing her face close to mine. It is choice. Her glow flared, not blinding, but warm. Steady. I do not wish to sleep alone anymore, she whispered. And I do not wish to wake without you present. That did it. Not the politics. Not the invitation to power. Not even the loyalty she'd shown publicly. The simplicity of it. I'd spent 17 years waking up in barracks, in dropships, in trenches. Alone. Mission first. Always. The idea of waking beside someone by choice. That was new territory. Dangerous. And suddenly, necessary. I'm not sure I know how to be anything else, I admitted. Then learn with me, she replied. No grand speech. No royal decree. Just that. Learn with me. And for the first time since I'd boarded that transport off Karsus 4, I wasn't thinking about the next fight. I was thinking about the next morning, and who I wanted beside me when it came. I submitted my resignation 2 days later. Admiral Talon didn't look surprised when the request crossed his desk. You're certain? He asked, fingers folded calmly in front of him. No, sir, I answered honestly. But I'm choosing it anyway. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. You were appointed her protector. Yes, sir. And now I'm going because I want to. That seemed to satisfy him. The transport to Arynn Prime departed under diplomatic escort. No fanfare, no ceremony, just a quiet transition from one life into another. Arynn sat beside me as the stars stretched into lines of light. She didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. Her hand found mine without hesitation. No political implication, no formal posture. Just contact. You are still afraid, she said gently. Yes. So am I. That surprised me. You? I asked. I am choosing something beyond tradition, beyond expectation. Her glow shimmered softly. That carries risk. I squeezed her hand slightly. Good. I'd worry if it didn't. She smiled, an expression she'd learned from me, but one that now belonged to her fully. When Arynn Prime came into view, it wasn't what I expected. No harsh spires or cold alien geometry. It glowed, oceans reflecting twin suns, cities woven into luminous forests. Beautiful. Unknown. Ours. She turned to me just before landing. You were assigned to protect me, she said quietly. I remember. And then I wanted something more. I met her eyes, and I chose it. The ramp lowered. A new world waited. I wasn't stepping onto it as her bodyguard. I wasn't stepping onto it as a Marine. I was stepping forward as the man she had chosen. And the woman I loved had chosen me back. Guardian had become partner. Duty had become decision. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't following orders. I was walking toward home. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.